The snow was falling hard on Christmas Eve in the year 2847. The small town of Cedar Falls in Minnesota was covered in white. The streets were empty because everyone was home with their families. But in a little diner called the Warm Hearth, a man sat alone in a corner booth. His name was Daniel Cole. He was 34 years old and he worked as a carpenter. In this age of machines and technology, most people thought his job was strange. Why would anyone build things with their hands when a fabricator could make anything in minutes? But Daniel did not care what people thought. He loved the feel of wood under his fingers. He loved creating something real, something that would last. Tonight, Daniel was waiting for someone he had never met. 3 weeks ago, his friend had convinced him to try a dating app. Daniel had said no at first. He was not good at talking to strangers. He was not good at making himself sound interesting. But his friend had kept pushing, and finally Daniel had given in. The app was called Galaxy Hearts. It was made for humans and aliens to meet each other. Since the Galactic Integration Treaty 30 years ago, many alien species now lived on Earth. Some people thought this was wonderful. Some people were still getting used to it. Daniel did not think about it much. To him, people were just people, no matter what they looked like. The app had matched him with someone named Valera. When Daniel first saw her profile, he had stopped breathing for a moment. She was a Draconith. The Draconith were a species from a place called the Iamber Nebula. Very far from Earth, they looked like dragons from old human stories. They had scales and wings and tails. They breathed fire when they were angry or scared. Most humans found them frightening. Daniel thought she was beautiful. Her profile picture showed a female, Draconith with deep red scales that seemed to glow. Her eyes were golden, like coins in sunlight. Her wings were folded behind her back, and she was smiling in a way that seemed both proud and sad at the same time. Her profile said she was an atmospheric engineer. She worked on the orbital stations above Earth, helping to control the weather and air quality. She had been living on Earth for 8 years, and at the bottom of her profile, in small letters, it said, "Single mother of 1 daughter, most men, Daniel knew, would have swiped past her without a second thought." A Draconith was already too different for most humans. A Draconith with a child was even more complicated, but Daniel had not swiped past her. Instead, he had sent her a message. Her reply had come 2 days later. It was long and careful and filled with worry. She explained that she was very busy with work. She explained that her daughter was young and needed a lot of attention. She explained that she had tried dating before and it had not gone well. Humans said they were interested, but when they learned about her situation, they always found excuses to leave. She told him she understood if he wanted to cancel. Daniel had read her message 3 times. Then he had written back 4 simple words, "I will be there anyway." Now here he was, sitting in the warm hearth on Christmas Eve, watching the snow fall outside the window. Valera was supposed to arrive at 8 o'clock. It was now almost 9. The waitress came to his table again. Her name was Patty, and she was a kind woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She had been working at this diner for 20 years, and she had seen a lot of lonely people on Christmas Eve. She refilled his coffee cup and looked at him with sympathy. "Stood up, honey?" she asked gently. Daniel shook his head. "She said she might be late. I told her I would wait." Patty raised her eyebrows. "On Christmas Eve? Must be someone special." "I think she might be," Daniel said quietly. "But I have not met her yet." Patty did not ask more questions. She just patted his shoulder and walked away. Daniel picked up his book. It was an old paperback, worn and soft from years of reading. It was a story about a man who built a house for his family, board by board, nail by nail. Daniel had read it many times. He found comfort in stories about people who made things with their hands. The minutes passed slowly. 9 o'clock became 9:30. 9:30 became 10. Daniel did not move. He did not check his phone to see if she had canceled. He did not get up and leave. He just sat there, drinking his coffee, reading his book, and waiting. Other customers came and went. A young couple holding hands. An old man eating pie alone. A family with 3 children who were too excited to sit still. They all looked at Daniel with curiosity. Who was this man sitting alone on Christmas Eve, clearly waiting for someone who was not coming? But Daniel did not notice their looks. His mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about his father. Daniel's father had been a carpenter too. He had taught Daniel everything he knew about working with wood. But more than that, he had taught Daniel about patience, about keeping promises, about being the kind of man that others could depend on. Before his father died, he had given Daniel one piece of advice. "Son," he had said, "the world is full of people who break their word. They make promises they do not mean. They say they will be there, and then they are not. Do not be like them. When you say something, mean it. When you promise something, keep it. That is what makes a man." Daniel had never forgotten those words. So when he told Valera that he would wait for her, he meant it. He did not care if she was an hour late or 2 hours late, or if she did not come at all. He had made a promise, and he would keep it. At 10:15, his phone buzzed with a message. It was from Valera. His heart beat faster as he opened it. The message said, "I am so sorry. The babysitter canceled at the last minute. My transport broke down. I am flying there now with my daughter. I understand if you have already left. I would not blame you." Daniel smiled and typed back, "I am still here. Take your time. I will wait." He put down his phone and looked out the window at the falling snow somewhere out there. A dragon was flying through a blizzard to meet him, and Daniel Cole, a simple carpenter from a small town, was not going anywhere. The wind was brutal and the snow was thick, but Valera kept flying. Her wings beat hard against the cold air. Each push forward took all her strength. Her muscles burned and her lungs ached, but she did not slow down. She could not slow down. Not tonight. On her back, wrapped in a special thermal blanket, her daughter Kira held on tight. The little hatchling was only 4 years old, still too young to fly on her own. Her small claws gripped her mother's scales, and her face was buried against Valera's neck to stay warm. "Mama," Kira said in a tiny voice, "are we almost there?" "Almost, little flame," Valera replied. "Just a little longer." But she did not know if that was true. The storm had turned the sky into a wall of white. She could barely see where she was going. Her wings were getting heavy with ice, and every few minutes she had to shake them hard to keep flying. This was madness. She knew it was madness. Any sensible Draconith would have stayed home on a night like this. Any sensible mother would have sent a message to cancel and tried again another day. But Valera could not do that. Not this time. She had been on Earth for 8 years now. 8 long years since she had left her homeworld behind. 8 years of working hard, raising her daughter alone, and trying to build a life in a strange place. And in all those 8 years, she had never found anyone who truly understood. Humans were kind. She had to give them that. They smiled at her. They held doors open for her. They said nice things about her scales and asked polite questions about her homeworld. But when it came to anything deeper than that, they always pulled back. She had tried dating many times. Each time the pattern was the same. At first, the human man would be excited. A real dragon. How interesting. How exotic. But then he would learn about Kira. He would realize that Valera was not just an exciting adventure, but a real person with real responsibilities. And slowly his messages would become shorter. His excuses would become longer. Until one day, he would simply stop responding. After the 5th time. Valera had stopped trying, but then, 3 weeks ago, she had received a message from a human named Daniel Cole. His message had been simple. No fancy words. No attempts to impress her. He had just said hello and asked about her work. And when she had written back her usual warning about being a single mother, expecting him to disappear like all the others, he had replied with words that made her heart stop. "I will be there anyway." Nobody had ever said that to her before. Now she was flying through a Christmas Eve blizzard to meet him. Because she refused to be the one who did not show up. She refused to let him sit there waiting, thinking that she was just like everyone else who made promises and did not keep them, even if he had already left. Even if he thought she was crazy. She had to try. The town of Cedar Falls appeared below her like a cluster of lights in the darkness. She dove down through the snow, her wings tucking close to her body. Kira squeaked with surprise at the sudden drop, but Valera held her tight. She landed in the parking lot of the Warm Hearth Diner at 10:47 p.m. Her claws scraped against the icy ground as she found her balance. For a moment she just stood there, breathing hard, letting the falling snow settle on her scales. She was late. Almost 3 hours late, he would be gone. Of course he would be gone. No one waited that long for a stranger. No one, but she had to check. She had to know for sure. Valera lifted Kira from her back and held her close. The little girl was shivering, even through the thermal blanket. Her golden eyes looked up at her mother with worry. "Is he going to be there, Mama?" Kira asked. Valera did not answer. She could not answer. She just walked toward the diner door and pushed it open. The warmth hit her like a wave. After the cold of the storm, the heated air of the diner felt almost painful. She blinked, letting her eyes adjust to the light, and then she saw him. He was sitting in a corner booth, just as he had said he would be. A book was open in his hands, and a cup of coffee sat on the table in front of him. He was a simple-looking man, not tall, not short, with brown hair and kind eyes. He wore a flannel shirt and work boots, the clothes of someone who made things with his hands. When the door opened, he looked up. He saw her, a draconith with red scales and frost on her wings, looking exhausted and windswept and slightly desperate. He saw the child in her arms, a small hatchling wrapped in a blanket, staring at him with wide golden eyes. For one terrible moment, Valera waited for his face to change. She waited for the surprise to become disappointment. She waited for him to stand up and make some excuse about having to leave. Instead, Daniel Cole smiled at her. It was not a polite smile, the kind that humans gave when they were being nice but did not mean it. It was a real smile, warm and genuine, as if she was exactly who he had been hoping to see. "You must be Valera," he said. His voice was calm and steady. "I am Daniel. Please come sit down. You look frozen." Valera could not move. She stood there in the doorway, snow melting off her wings and dripping onto the floor, trying to understand what was happening. "You waited," she said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears. "You actually waited." "I said I would," Daniel replied, as if it was the simplest thing in the world. "And who is this little one?" He was looking at Kira now, and his smile had grown even warmer. Kira, who was usually shy around strangers, was staring back at him with curious eyes. "This is my daughter," Valera said slowly. "Her name is Kira. I am sorry I had to bring her. The babysitter canceled and I had no other choice." "Do not apologize," Daniel said. "Children are always welcome." He stood up from the booth and pulled out a chair. Then he looked around and waved to the waitress. "Excuse me, Patty? Could we get some extra blankets and maybe some hot cocoa for the little one?" Patty, who had been watching the whole scene with wide eyes, nodded quickly and hurried to the back. Valera walked to the booth on legs that felt like they did not belong to her. She sat down across from Daniel, still holding Kira in her arms. The little girl was looking around the diner with wonder, her tail swishing back and forth under the blanket. "I do not understand," Valera said finally. "Why did you wait so long?" "Most humans would have left after an hour. Most would have left after 30 minutes. Daniel looked at her with those kind eyes. "Because I made you a promise," he said. "And where I come from, a promise means something." For the first time in a very long time, Valera did not know what to say, so she just sat there in the warm diner, with her daughter in her arms and a strange human across from her, and let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Kira fell asleep within 20 minutes. The little hatchling had fought it at first. Her eyes kept wandering around the diner, looking at the strange human decorations, the blinking lights on the small Christmas tree in the corner, the frost patterns on the windows. But the warmth of the booth and the hot cocoa in her belly were too much for her tired body. Soon her eyes closed, and she curled up against her mother's side, her small tail wrapped around Valera's arm. Daniel had watched this happen with a gentle expression. He did not seem bothered by the sleeping child. He did not seem impatient to get on with the date now that they were finally face to face. He just waited quietly while Valera made sure her daughter was comfortable. "She is beautiful," Daniel said softly when Kira was finally asleep. "She has your eyes." Valera looked down at her daughter. "She has her father's temperament. Always curious. Always exploring. She does not know how to be afraid of anything." "That sounds like a good way to be." "It is. Until she tries to touch a power conduit because she wants to see what happens." Valera smiled, but there was sadness in it. Her father was the same way. He was an engineer on the mining platforms, always taking things apart to understand them. Daniel heard the past tense. He did not push. He just nodded and said, "My father was like that too. He could look at any piece of wood and see what it wanted to become. He said everything had a purpose. You just had to be patient enough to find it." "Was?" Valera asked. "He passed away 5 years ago. Cancer." "I am sorry." "Thank you. I'm sorry about your mate." For a moment they just sat there in silence. It was not an uncomfortable silence. It was the kind of quiet that happens when two people realize they understand each other in ways that do not need words. Patty came by with more coffee and a slice of pie that neither of them had ordered. "On the house," she said with a wink. "It is Christmas after all." She looked at the sleeping hatchling and her face softened. Poor little thing was exhausted. Flying through that storm must have been hard on her. "She is strong," Valera said. "Like her father?" After Patty left, Daniel leaned forward slightly. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes, why did you come tonight?" "I mean really come. You could have just sent a message and canceled. Anyone would have understood. But instead, you flew through a blizzard with your daughter. That seems like a lot of trouble for a first date with a stranger." Valera was quiet for a long moment. She looked down at her coffee cup, watching the steam rise. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. "Do you know what it is like to be alone in a crowd?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, I think I do. That is what the last 8 years have been for me. I came to Earth because I thought it would be a good place to raise Kira. Humans are kind. Humans are accepting. Everyone said so. And it is true, in a way. People smile at me. They talk to me. They invite me to their parties and their gatherings. But there is always a wall. I can feel it. They see my scales, my wings, my fire, and they think, she is not one of us. That must be lonely." "It is. But that is not the worst part." Valera finally looked up at him. "The worst part is when I try to let someone in. When I take a chance on someone. Because every time I do, they find an excuse to leave. I am too different. Too complicated. I come with too much baggage." She glanced at Kira. "My daughter is not baggage. She is my whole world. But to most people, she is just another reason to walk away." Daniel listened to all of this without interrupting. His face did not show pity or discomfort. It just showed attention. Real, genuine attention. "So when you sent me that message," Valera continued, "and you said you would wait for me anyway, I did not believe it at first. I thought it was just words. But then tonight, when everything went wrong, I kept thinking about those words. And I thought, what if he is different? What if there is one human out there who actually means what he says?" She paused and took a breath. "I had to find out, even if it meant flying through a storm. Even if it meant bringing Kira with me because I had no other choice. I had to know if you were real." Daniel did not say anything right away. He reached across the table and, very carefully, as if asking permission, placed his hand near hers. "Not touching? Just close." "I am real," he said simply. "And I am not going anywhere." Valera felt something crack inside her chest. Not a bad crack. Not pain. It was more like ice breaking apart in spring. Like something frozen finally beginning to thaw. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Why are you like this? What makes you different from all the others?" Daniel thought about the question. Really thought about it, the way Valera had noticed humans did when they cared about giving an honest answer. "My father taught me something when I was young," he said finally. He said the world is full of people who break their promises, people who say they will do something and then find reasons not to. He told me that being reliable is not glamorous. It does not make you famous or rich or exciting, but it is the foundation of everything good. A house needs a strong foundation. So does a relationship. So does a life. He looked at her with those steady, kind eyes. When you told me about your situation, I saw someone who had been let down too many times. Someone who expected to be disappointed. And I decided right then that I would not be another disappointment. Not because I want something from you. Not because I am trying to prove anything. Just because that is who I want to be. Valera stared at him. In 300 years of contact between humans and Draconith, she had met thousands of humans. Scientists, politicians, traders, tourists. She had studied their culture and learned their language. She thought she understood them, but this man, this simple carpenter in a flannel shirt, was showing her something she had never seen before. Among my people, she said slowly, there is a word, Ashkareth. It means someone who carries their soul on the outside. Someone who cannot hide who they truly are. It is very rare, even among Draconith. We consider it sacred. Daniel tilted his head. Is that a good thing? It is the best thing. Valera's golden eyes were bright. It means you are trustworthy in the deepest way, because you cannot be anything other than yourself. Daniel smiled. It was a shy smile, almost embarrassed. I do not know about all that. I am just a guy who builds furniture and tries to keep his word. That is exactly what I mean, Valera said softly. Outside the window, the snow had finally stopped falling. The world was still and white and quiet. And inside the warm little diner, two lonely souls began to realize that maybe they were not so lonely after all. They talked until midnight, and then they kept talking. The diner grew quieter as the last customers left. Patty dimmed the lights and put on soft music in the background. She did not ask them to leave. She did not even look at the clock. She just kept their coffee cups full and smiled whenever she passed their booth. Daniel told Valera about his work. He explained how he chose each piece of wood, how he studied the grain and the color, how he imagined what it could become before he made the first cut. He told her about the chairs he had built for a grandmother who could no longer walk to the store to buy furniture. He told her about the crib he had made for a young couple expecting their first child. He told her about the casket he had built for his own father, carved with images of all the things the old man had loved, trees, mountains, a fishing rod, a hammer. You made your father's casket? Valera asked, her voice soft with surprise. It was the last thing I could do for him, Daniel said. The last thing I could build with the skills he taught me. It felt right. Valera understood this. Among the Draconith, the dead were burned in great fires, and the family members were the ones who carried the flames. It was a final act of love, a way to say goodbye with your own hands. You are not just a carpenter, she said. You are an artist. Daniel shook his head. I just make things that people need. That is not art. Making something that people need is the highest form of art. On my homeworld, the greatest creators are not the ones who make beautiful things for rich people to look at. They are the ones who make useful things for ordinary people to hold. Daniel looked at her with new eyes. I never thought of it that way. That is because humans are too modest about the right things and too proud about the wrong things. Valera smiled to show she was joking. It is one of your strangest qualities. Daniel laughed. It was a good laugh, warm and real. Valera found that she liked the sound of it very much. Then it was her turn to share. She told him about her work on the orbital stations, how she helped control the atmosphere of Earth, making sure the air stayed clean and the weather stayed balanced. She explained how the stations floated above the planet like giant metal moons, and how she could see the sunrise twice every day if she wanted to. Do you miss it? Daniel asked. Your homeworld? Valera was quiet for a moment. Sometimes. The sky there is purple instead of blue. The mountains are taller than anything on Earth, and the fire lakes ... You have never seen anything so beautiful. Liquid fire that glows in the darkness, stretching for miles. It sounds incredible. It was, but it was also a hard place. Resources were scarce. Conflicts were common. When Kira's father died, I knew I could not raise her there alone. So I came here. She looked out the window at the snow-covered town. Earth is quieter, softer. Sometimes I feel like I do not belong here. But I know it is a good place for my daughter to grow up. What was he like? Daniel asked gently. Kira's father. Valera's eyes grew distant. His name was Tornak. He was a dreamer. Always looking at the stars, always wanting to know what was beyond the next horizon. He used to say that the universe was too big for anyone to understand, but that did not mean we should stop trying. He sounds like a good man. He was. He was not perfect. He worked too much and forgot to come home for dinner. He got so excited about his projects that he did not notice when other people were tired or sad. But he loved Kira more than anything in the galaxy. And he loved me in his own way. How did he die? An accident on the mining platforms. An explosion. They said it was quick. They said he did not suffer. Valera's voice was steady, but there was old pain beneath it. I tell myself that is true. It helps. Daniel did not offer empty words of comfort. He did not say that everything happens for a reason or that time heals all wounds. He just sat there with her, sharing the weight of her grief without trying to fix it. My father's death was slow, he said after a while. The cancer took him piece by piece. Some days I think that was worse. But then I remember that I got to say goodbye. I got to tell him I loved him. I got to hold his hand at the end. He looked at her. I do not know which is better, quick or slow. I think losing someone you love is just hard, no matter how it happens. Valera nodded. Yes, that is exactly right. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Daniel reached into his coat pocket. I made something for you, he said, looking suddenly nervous. I know it is strange to bring a gift on a first date, but it is Christmas, and I wanted to give you something. He pulled out a small wooden box and placed it on the table between them. Valera looked at it with curiosity. The box itself was beautiful, made from dark wood with simple carved patterns along the edges. She picked it up carefully, feeling the smoothness of the surface. Open it, Daniel said quietly. She lifted the lid. Inside, resting on a bed of soft cloth, was a small wooden dragon. It was no bigger than her palm, carved with incredible detail. The wings were spread wide, as if about to take flight. The scales were tiny but precise, each one visible to the eye. And in the dragon's claws it held a small star, polished until it gleamed. Valera stared at it. She could not speak. It is not based on any real species, Daniel said quickly, as if worried he had done something wrong. I did not want to be presumptuous. I just imagined what a dragon carrying hope might look like. I know it is silly. If you do not like it, you do not have to... Daniel. Valera's voice stopped him. She looked up from the carving, and her golden eyes were filled with something he could not name. You made this? With your own hands? Yes, I have been working on it since we first started talking. I wanted to finish it before tonight. Valera held the little dragon in her palm. It was warm from being in his pocket, warm from being close to him. Among my people, she said softly, a handmade gift is not just a present. It carries part of the maker's soul. When you give someone something you made with your own hands, you are giving them a piece of yourself. Daniel's cheeks turned red. I did not know that. I'm sorry if I do not apologize. Valera's voice was firm but gentle. Do you understand what this means? You barely know me. We have only just met. And yet you gave me part of your soul. Daniel looked at her, and in that moment something passed between them. Something that did not need words. I guess I did, he said simply. It felt right. Valera closed her fingers around the little dragon and held it against her chest, where her heart beat steady and strong. It is the most precious gift I have ever received, she whispered, and I will treasure it always. It was past 1 in the morning when they finally left the diner. The snow had stopped falling hours ago. And now Cedar Falls lay under a blanket of white so pure it seemed to glow in the moonlight. The streets were empty. The houses were dark. The whole world had gone to sleep, dreaming of Christmas morning. But Daniel and Valera were wide awake. Kira stirred as her mother lifted her from the booth. The little hatchling blinked her golden eyes and looked around in confusion. Then she saw Daniel standing nearby, and instead of pulling away like she usually did with strangers, she reached toward him. Valera froze in surprise. "Mama," Kira said sleepily, "can the nice man carry me?" "I am tired." Valera looked at Daniel, uncertain. She has never asked that before. She does not usually trust strangers. Daniel smiled and held out his arms. "May I?" Slowly, carefully, Valera transferred her daughter to Daniel's arms. Kira immediately curled against his chest, her small tail wrapping around his arm, her head resting on his shoulder. Within seconds she was asleep again. Daniel held her like she was made of glass, like she was the most precious thing in the world. "She likes you," Valera said quietly. "Children know things that adults cannot see. My father used to say that too." Daniel adjusted his grip slightly to make Kira more comfortable. He said children could see through all the masks that grown-ups wear. They see who you really are. They walked outside together into the cold Christmas night. The air was sharp and clean, and their breath made little clouds that floated away into darkness. Valera's wings needed to be free for flight, so she could not carry Kira on her back like before. For a moment, she stood there, trying to figure out what to do. "Let me walk you home," Daniel said. "I live on the orbital station. I cannot walk there." "Then let me walk you to wherever you need to go." Valera looked at him. This human, this simple carpenter from a small town, who had waited for her for 3 hours, who had welcomed her daughter without question, who had given her a piece of his soul carved in wood. "I had a wonderful time tonight," she said. "I know that sounds inadequate, but I do not have better words." "It does not sound inadequate," Daniel replied. "It sounds honest. I will take honest over fancy words any day." They stood in the parking lot, neither one quite ready to say goodbye. The moonlight cast long shadows across the snow. Somewhere in the distance, a bell was ringing, welcoming Christmas Day. Valera took a step closer to Daniel. She looked into his eyes, searching for something. And when she found it, she made a decision. "Among my people," she said softly, "there is a gesture. It is very old, very sacred. We do not do it lightly." Daniel stood very still. What kind of gesture? Instead of answering with words, Valera leaned forward. Carefully, gently, she pressed her forehead against his. Her scales were warm against his skin. Her breath was soft on his face. Daniel did not move. He did not pull away. Some instinct told him that something important was happening, and he let it happen. "This is called Varashka," Valera whispered. "It means I am choosing to let you see me. Not the mask I show to the world. Not the strong single mother who always has everything under control. Just me, all of me. The parts that are afraid. The parts that are broken. The parts that hope." They stayed like that for a long moment, forehead to forehead, breathing the same cold air. "Then I will make sure to be worth seeing," Daniel said quietly. Valera pulled back. And for the first time that night, she smiled fully. Not the careful, guarded smile she had shown before. A real smile, wide and warm, showing teeth that were sharper than human teeth, but somehow not frightening at all. "Same time next week?" she asked. "I will be here," Daniel said, "however long it takes." Very carefully, Valera took Kira back from his arms. The little girl did not wake up. She just mumbled something in her sleep and snuggled closer to her mother. Then Valera spread her wings. They were magnificent in the moonlight, red and gold, stretching wide like the wings of a bird about to take flight. "Thank you, Daniel," she said, "for waiting, for the gift, for everything." "Thank you for coming," he replied. Even through the storm, she smiled one more time. Then, with a powerful beat of her wings, she launched into the sky. Daniel watched as she rose higher and higher, until she was just a dark shape against the stars, and then she was gone. Daniel stood alone in the empty parking lot. The cold was starting to seep through his coat, but he did not move. He just stood there, looking up at the sky, thinking about everything that had happened. After a while, he started walking home. His house was small, a simple wooden building on the edge of town. He had built most of it himself, adding rooms and fixing walls over the years. It was nothing fancy, but it was his. He unlocked the door and went inside. The fire in the stove had died down, but the embers still glowed. He added another log and watched the flames begin to grow. Then he sat down at his workbench. The bench was covered with tools and scraps of wood, the evidence of years of work. Daniel picked up a piece of maple and turned it over in his hands. Feeling the grain, imagining what it could become, he thought about Valera, about her red scales and golden eyes, about the way she had looked at him when he gave her the carved dragon, about the Varashka, the gesture of trust that had felt like a door opening. He thought about Kira, about how the little girl had reached for him without fear, about how she had fallen asleep in his arms like she belonged there. And he thought about himself, about the lonely years since his father died, about the quiet house and the empty evenings, about how he had almost stopped hoping that things would change, but things had changed. Tonight, everything had changed. Daniel smiled and picked up his carving knife. He did not know what he was making yet. He just knew he wanted to make something. Something for Valera, something for Kira, something for the future that was suddenly, impossibly, beginning to look bright. 6 months later, Daniel Cole married Valera of the Ember Nebula in a small ceremony that blended human and Draconith traditions. They exchanged vows under a sky that was both blue and purple, thanks to some help from Valera's friends on the orbital station. Kira served as the flower girl, scattering both rose petals and traditional fire crystals down the aisle. When reporters asked Daniel how they had met, he gave the same answer every time. "I waited for her," he said. "That is all. I just waited." When they asked Valera the same question, she said something that made headlines across the galaxy. "Humans are not the strongest species," she said. "They are not the smartest or the fastest or the most advanced. But they have something no other species has. They are stubborn. When a human decides to care about someone, they simply refuse to stop. They will wait through storms. They will give pieces of their soul to strangers. They will love you even when it is hard, even when it does not make sense, even when everyone else has given up." She looked at Daniel with eyes full of light. That is humanity's true gift to the galaxy. Not their technology, not their adaptability, their stubborn, beautiful, impossible love. And in a small wooden house in Cedar Falls, where a carpenter and a dragon and a little girl lived together, a tiny carved figure sat on the mantel above the fireplace. A dragon holding a star, made by human hands, carrying hope into the future. The end.